But with me in the studio, I'd like to welcome Mike Forrester. And Mike, it's great to have you here. Mike is the Managing Director of the Capital Arts Theatre, Cameco Capital Arts Theatre. So it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's great to have you back in the community. We were talking just before we started, and you were telling me about you were here many moons ago, shall we say, but now you've come back.
I have personally come pretty much full circle at the end of my performance career as a French horn player in the 80s. I had an injury and that sidelined me. Not unlike a sports injury, you think you're always going to be able to do something, and all of a sudden you cannot. So by a story that really would take far more than the few minutes that we have here today to explain, I wound up working for Jerry Good, the general manager of Classical 103.1 at 884 Division Street, which was, of course, at that time the HQ of Martin Rosenthal's CFMX, which would have been known as the Sound of a Different Drummer. So I lived in a country place just off of Highway 45 south of the Dale Road some 33 years ago. So here I am. Who knew? But
you must have seen the community sure changed a lot in that time, and to some extent.
Interestingly, yes and no. Coburg seems to me to have grown and changed to some degree more than Port Hope has, actually. Whether that's through physical constraints or what have you. And I think having those two communities, which, since I'm actually not from here, I'm a Montreal-born animal, always seem to be a beneficial thing. I mean, you certainly have historical context in Coburg and the beautiful Victoria Hall, which I know really well. Mark Finnan and I actually started a concert series in there 30 years ago.
Yeah, I worked with Mark
too.
So
I did, yeah. So I know that facility well and got to know the mayor, Angus, who's a wonderful man. And it became part of the community. So going down the road to Port Hope didn't seem all that strange to me. And yet Port Hope has retained its historical charm, and the Architectural Conservancy has been quite appropriately rigid with respect to its work. And Coburg is, by the same token, more industrially dynamic and has added a lot of bells and whistles and residences. So they seem to be almost a perfect marriage, if you will, as an outsider coming back in.
Yeah, and we have between the two communities, we have a lot of arts and culture.
That's
and
true.
There's a lot going on. And Coburg, of course, has an outstanding waterfront. So, we utilize that with the many events and festivals that happen here in Coburg, but certainly in Port Hope, there's just as much happening thanks to the Main Street and the Capital Theatre, because it brings a lot of people in, and of course the Ganaraska River. So yeah, we've got it's amazing. It's amazing between the two communities what happens here, and it's just fantastic. So, anyways, we're here to talk about the spring and summer season for Capital Theatre, and you have a lot going on. So coming up is Guys and Dolls.
It certainly is. The full cast arrived 2 days ago. My office is about 15 feet from the Sculthorpe Theatre upstairs that is used as a rehearsal hall during these periods, and so there's a lot of song and dance going on, and I actually happen to know Guys and Dolls quite well, having been in the orchestra pit for it many years ago. It was originally written in 1950 based on the previous book by Damon Runyon. And what's interesting about it, not only from its historical context, and it's guys and balls and criminals and villains and all about the heart at the end of the day, and a wonderful thing. But Frank Lesser wrote the music for the Broadway premiere that hit the stage in 1950. And the writers of the actual musical, who were rewriting Damon Runyon's book to be appropriate for the stage, took one listen at the music, looked at their script, tore it up, and rewrote Guys and Dolls to weave around the music that Mr. Lesser had created. It's amazing to me even now when I hear the rehearsals going on, plinkety plink, and keyboards going on, and the music director giving instructions that, oh yeah, that song's actually from Guys and Dolls. As frequently happens with musicals created from that era. So it's really wonderful in that respect. I think the other notable thing, Susan Furley, our brand new artistic director, is also directing Guys and Dolls, and along with her coming out party, if you will, as artistic director, this will be her directorial debut in Northumberland County generally. So we're really excited about that, and she's been extremely careful with cast selection. There'll be some old familiar faces in the cast that have performed on the stage at the Capitol Theatre in the past, and some fresh faces as well. But I already noticed a remarkable chemistry amongst the cast, and they're a supremely talented group of individuals. These are people who are at present not busy at Stratford or Shaw.
Right,
so you'll see a very, very high level of talent on the stage, and also what Susan has conceived with respect to the physical aspects of the theatre. It was quite remarkable. The Capitol's been notable for its use of things like projections and what have you in previous years. Those are going to continue, but they will continue in a different way and in a different format. And I've been really impressed with the level of set construction that we have. They're crafted as such that you wouldn't mind having it in your house, and that's not frequently the case, even on a stage in Toronto. So when I take a look at what's being done visually with the show, musically with the show, what people will see in terms of both traditional sets and advanced projection technology, and the actual musical itself, which is really wonderful. It's going to be it'll be a wonderful experience for the people who are able to come.
Okay, so that runs from the previews start May 21st, and that runs through to the middle of June.
That's
and
correct.
Then starting July, I would think a very dramatic piece, Tuesdays with Maurey. Lots of ups and downs. It was a great movie with, I think Jack Lemmon was in that
that's
movie.
right.
Wonderful book. And this will be a little change of pace going to Tuesdays with Maurey.
A little bit. I mean, I think Tuesdays with Maurey is a thinking person's piece. And if you are, as I am, a fan of Mitch Albom, it is notable for the expression he puts into what the characters have to say. In a way, because it's a conversation, largely, and it is about the weaving in and out of the individuals concerned, and it's a two-hander, so it's very intimate. It's almost an antidote to the memes that appear on social media with pithy sayings that are rendered meaningless by insane repetition, in which for 2 hours you are immersed, audience and actor, in a conversation that has some real thinking behind it, as Mitch's books always do. He always seemed to me to be an Americana version of Mordecai Rickler, if you will. And I think those who are really interested in really good theater will come out having been satisfied that the play is a faithful rendition of Mitch Albom's work.
Right.
And I was really pleased. I sent a note off to Mitch's publicist for the heck of it, because he's been known to show up.
Is that right?
And not that I necessarily know that he will, but he has Stephen King's affinity for small towns. And lo and behold, but a week later, plowing around his website, he had another book coming out, which apparently he does. And there's a listing for the show in Port Hope on Mitch's website. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. So, and he's done that with all of the places where Tuesdays with Maurey appears. So that's really a wonderful thing on his part. It's a terrific show.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing. I read the book and certainly saw the movie, and it's amazing that Mitch, I believe, was a sports writer, wasn't he?
He was indeed, yes.
Yeah,
for many years.
For many years. So, a fellow that was an ardent sports enthusiast would write such amazing books.
Well, I think what he brought to life in terms of his sports writing, he's done with some of the American story almost in the same way that the American songbook has become famous. So. Thank heavens for that. I think it's a piece of Americana that we forget about in this day and age.
So coming up after that, another great show. Lots of music,
Quartet.
$1 Million Quartet, and it starts in August. So this is absolutely phenomenal. I didn't really realize this. I'm a pretty big music fan, so reading about this and thinking about what this show is going to bring, it will be amazing.
I'm delighted to have it here. I saw it. I happen to be working back on Broadway for a stretch, which I've done twice. And was invited to the opening night of $1 Million Quartet on Broadway, and it was. I don't think you necessarily have to be, as many people are anyway, a Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, or Johnny Cash or Elvis Presley fan, to think about the fact that those four people, two of whom at that point were quite well known,
Right.
Jerry Lee Lewis and Carl Perkins, of course, and two of whom certainly over time superseded those two with respect to Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, whose music remains extremely popular to this day. I don't think there'd be as many Elvis tributes around if that wasn't the case. And it is a story that is based on a true event in which on one night, almost by accident, those four men found themselves in one recording studio at one time and didn't necessarily completely get along, being the rather large personalities that they were. There's a lot of guys in one room. Only one or two.
Yeah.
But all that to say that it wound up becoming a jam session.
Yeah.
And so the musical is woven in and around the story of how that evening came to be, about the characters themselves, about the jam session, and about some of the music that not only was performed that night, but evolved outwards out of that particular evening. So it's a remarkable musical, and I'm often asked what it's about, so it's great to have the opportunity to actually sit and tell a bit of that story here.
Well, and it was, I saw the clip on the site from the Tony Awards in 2010.
Oh.
Yeah, which shows, you know, it was a big hit on Broadway. So
And it's really fun.
Yeah, so it'll be great. So we've got a little bit just to wrap up here, but let's talk about your announcement about the expansion of the Capital Arts Center, Cameco Capital Arts Center, and let's talk about, you know, you're going to make an announcement on May 23rd.
Right. I think that there are two things to cover. The expansion project, there's some information up and running in the form of a website announcement in a media release that's available at capitaltheatre.com. But essentially the purpose of it is to expand the lobby for accessibility purposes and to make it more usable. Upstairs above where the external patio is, if you know the building on the south side, that's where the lobby will expand. Above that, there'll be a rehearsal space. The primary objective of which is to free up the upstairs Sculthorpe Theatre for a lot more community use, smaller performances. I have a list as long as my arm of people who've called me for access, and I've got to say, just give me a bit of time. We're about to fix that problem. And it will also have, behind the new rehearsal hall, a catering kitchen that'll be able to serve up to about 150 people, so that'll provide work for the many fine caterers in the area, and we'll be able to service more different kinds of groups in the building. And then we'll also have, because at present our sets are all over the place, and pieces of costumes and 5,000 pounds of popcorn and so on, there will be a storage space that is also suitable for set building and what have you, and a couple of offices, because right now we're out of space.
Right. So yeah, really the expansion is to really look at redefining some of your spaces and providing a little more space for things. So.
Well, what's transpired out of that is people incorrectly thought that we were closed through it, but all of it takes place on the exterior. And fall programming is being put into place. There'll be 4 concerts to announce, one in September, Beyond What's There, 2 in December, including a really fun New Year's Eve, and one in early November that's comprised of some really good friends of mine, the top animals in the music business in Toronto, along with a very family-oriented show that's also from a famous book that will have lots of young people in it, and a Christmas panto that will be announced in its usual version. So full bore, full on, open for business, and within a year we'll be ready to do more, present more, and offer more access to the community generally.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, Mike. So thanks for dropping in today. Wish you all the best. We'll see you during the summer at the theater, if not before, and look forward to hearing more about the fall.
I look forward to seeing you and everyone who's watching there.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much.